pretty sure it's fentanyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Portland police officer Donnie Matthew has just arrested a woman named Amber for drug possession in downtown Portland. Next, the officer uses a fentanyl test kit to find out for sure what Amber has.
Okay, it's positive. It's got one line. Okay.
Before September 1st of this year, Amber would have gotten a citation for the small amount of fentanyl she had on her. Now that Oregon's law has changed, she's been arrested. Officer Matthew explains her choice about what happens next.
Okay, so I don't see that you have any warrants or anything like that. So you have two options. You can either go to jail today for the possession of fentanyl and tested positive, or we can call for deflection, which is like some social workers that will come out that have had prior addiction problems as well in the past, and they come out and talk to you, and you don't get charged. So you get treatment. It's like a treatment option.
I would love to talk
So I'll call them.
It's a little hard to hear, but Amber says she would love to talk to somebody about treatment options. So Officer Matthew makes a call. And after about 20 minutes, Mina Gilson shows up.
Sounds like she's agreed to work with us to get her into detox. So that's what we're going to do.
From the Gert Boyle studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. It's been a little over a month since Oregon officially ended its experiment with drug decriminalization. Now there's a new set of experiments going on around the state. When people are caught with small amounts of illegal drugs, the consequences depend on a variety of factors, including what county they happen to be in. First, let me back up a little and remind you how we got here. Oregon voters passed Ballot Measure 110 in 2020. It was the largest drug decriminalization effort in the country, and it did two things. It decriminalized small amounts of hard drugs, and it earmarked hundreds of millions of dollars for drug treatment efforts. But the drug treatment part of the ballot measure was slow to come online, and the drug decriminalization part led to an increase in people using drugs in public spaces. Fast forward to the 2024 legislative session. That's when Oregon lawmakers passed House Bill 4002, which made drug possession a crime once more. The bill also attempted to preserve the focus on addiction as a public health problem, allowing people to avoid criminal consequences by getting into treatment programs. But every county in Oregon is doing that a little differently. OPB reporters Conrad Wilson and Troy Brennelson have each visited different counties to see what drug recriminalization looks like on the ground. So, Conrad, what options do counties have for dealing with people who are caught with small amounts of illegal drugs?
So House Bill 4002, it allows counties 4 different ways to deal with substance use or a misdemeanor drug possession charge. There's diversion, probation, and even jail. And then there's also this mechanism called deflection, which we're going to talk about a lot. Counties don't have to opt in, and those that are going about it some really different ways. But at its core, it's an opportunity for someone using drugs to avoid jail or criminal charges so long as they engage with drug treatment. So in Multnomah County, the state's most populous, when police stop someone for using drugs, they can be eligible for deflection if they aren't engaging in other crimes, even low-level ones, and if they haven't failed out of deflection within the previous 30 days. So as of mid-October, police now can take someone who's eligible for deflection, who says they want treatment rather than going to jail. They can go to the center in inner Southeast Portland.
And you took a tour of Portland's deflection center shortly before it opened. How is it set up?
Well, it wasn't open when Amber, that was the one we heard at the beginning, when she entered deflection. Rather, she dealt with a mobile team of treatment providers who came to her. So now that the center is open, it's a place where police can take people like Amber as a first step in the process, of getting treatment in lieu of an arrest. People can't stay there overnight, so that's why I say it's a first step. Bernard J.B. Foster is the CEO of Turk House. It's a Baltimore-based nonprofit. It's a treatment provider that's running the deflection center. And he walked me through what will happen when someone comes in.
So initially, every patient that comes through here would have to come through law enforcement. Once the patient pulls up, we'll open this door, law enforcement will pull them in, and then our peers and then the security here will do the searches.
Searches for like weapons or anything?
Yeah, anything, paraphernalia, everything, yeah. And then we'll lock their personal belongings up, and then of course we'll take the patient into the open space where the nurses will begin to do an assessment on the patient to determine if there's anything that is outstanding that we need to be worried about or anything like that. And then after that, we have the case managers working and collaborating to ensure where the next triage is going to take place.
In terms of those next steps, though, are there actually enough drug treatment beds available to send people to?
There's not right now, and that's something that J.B. Foster brought up comparing Portland to Baltimore, where he's based, noting that we don't have nearly enough residential treatment beds and really a lack of the right services to meet people at the right time.
I mean, I thought Baltimore was bad, and then I came here and said, man, Baltimore is heaven.
And Troy, you visited Lane County and its neighbor Douglas County. Both of these counties cover a wide geographic area stretching all the way from the coast to the Cascades. So why did you focus on these two counties in particular?
Yeah, so we really wanted to just take a step back and look across the state and see what's really going on county by county. One county might be spending their money on shelters, for example, while another is going to hire substance use specialists. Lane and Douglas County are two neighboring counties. They both straddle I-5, where there's going to be a lot of drugs moving through. And ideologically, they are just two very, very different counties. And that's played out in deflection, as we guessed. Lane County is a much more progressive county. It's home to the University of Oregon. It's got a long history of counterculture. And they're really swinging for the fences. The state gave them $2.1 million, and they're hiring substance use experts. They're planning on setting up housing, not just shelter. And their district attorney is planning on deflecting a wider array of crimes than just drug crimes. And all of that is a bid to keep people out of the criminal justice system. Then you cross over into Douglas County, and to put it bluntly, they're just not participating at all. They're basically training their officers how to enforce drug laws as though Measure 110 never even happened. That means you are almost guaranteed to be going into the criminal justice system. Citations are all but guaranteed. Jail is more likely.
Okay, so Lane County is also doing deflection or offering people treatment in lieu of an arrest. How is Lane County approaching this differently than Multnomah County, as we've been hearing about?
Yeah, as Conrad laid out, like Multnomah County is planning this deflection center. Lane County is not going to be spending their money on a deflection center, so to speak, but rather what they're planning to do is pay for housing for people and then have case managers go visit those people where they're staying. That's not to rule out a deflection center in the future. It's just not in the plans currently. There's also going to be more deflectable crimes that I mentioned. When I interviewed the deflection coordinator, who's this guy named Clint Riley, who used to run the Lane County Jail, I asked him this hypothetical situation. Like, say a drug user steals $20 worth of goods from a grocery store, and they're caught, and they also have a small amount of drugs on them. Is it just the drug crimes that get deflected, or what?
That particular incident right there, say there's 4 charges that come out of that, and let's throw drug possession as one of them.
Right.
And everybody agrees to deflection and everyone's on board with that, the entire case would get deflected.
Okay, that's, pretty different from what Multnomah County is doing. In Multnomah County, people only qualify for deflection if they haven't committed another crime. In Lane County, what kinds of additional charges can be dropped if someone chooses the deflection option?
So Riley and the DA in Lane County are telling police that there are a number of charges that are deflectible. If a person resides in Lane County, doesn't have any convictions for domestic violence or sexual assault, they're eligible for deflecting several crimes, including trespassing, stealing to feed an addiction, being intoxicated in public. And these are the crimes that are really outgrowths of addiction itself. I mean, if you're trying to support someone with drug use, they're going to be caught in the act probably of doing something else. How rare is it that law enforcement finds someone only doing drugs? And from what we've found, this policy that Lane County is doing is far more progressive than what other counties are doing.
I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of time in jail and prison due to their addiction. And at some point, what stopped their addiction for most people, they got treatment. And once they got the treatment, then they went down the path of what I've already said. They're in recovery and the criminality goes away.
And how many chances do people get to access treatment through deflection?
I mean, this goes back to counties doing things differently. It really depends on where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Lane County, they aren't really sure yet. Riley told me he currently can't see a reason why a person would be limited on the number of times that they could be deflected, for example.
In Multnomah County, every 30 days. But in Washington and Clackamas, you only get one shot at deflection.
Okay, so how many Oregon counties have some kind of system like what Lane and Multnomah County are doing in terms of offering people drug treatment instead of jail time when they're arrested for having small amounts of illegal drugs on them?
The majority of Oregon's counties are or say they want to do deflection, but that is a huge spectrum from counties surrounding the Portland area that are up and running, along with other counties like Lane that Troy's talked about that are getting started soon, but some counties that really have just indicated, they want to participate, but they're just really in those early stages.
Yeah, and 8 counties in Oregon are like Douglas County, not doing deflection at all.
Coming up after a break, we'll go to Douglas County to hear what recriminalization looks like there. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll bring you something new and interesting to listen to each week. You can also follow OPB on Instagram at OPBphoto to stay up to date with what we and all of our friends at OPB are up to. And remember, this episode about drug recriminalization and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show, including a previous episode with Conrad about the state's effort to address drug addiction, is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now back to the complicated and fascinating topic of Oregon's changing approach to addiction. When Oregon lawmakers passed House Bill 4002, they essentially ended 4 years of drug decriminalization. Troy, before the break, you mentioned that there are 8 counties in Oregon that are not doing deflection at all, and you visited one of them recently. What does recriminalization look like in Douglas County? Yeah,
in Douglas County and other counties like it, it's useful if you can remember what things were like in 2018 or 2019 before Measure 110. If a police officer, through the course of basic police work, comes to find out that you're possessing illegal drugs, then you are at least citable. Now, there's obviously a lot of factors there. It depends on how much of the drug you have, whether you have warrants, all these sliding scales to determine what crimes you're potentially committing. But the bottom line here is that you're in the system. You're going to go before a judge pretty much no matter what, whether through a ticket or an arrest, and being a user of those resources that, in case we haven't made clear, are under a lot of pressure. From a law enforcement perspective, a lot of these deputies are now having to learn how drug possession was treated back then. I went on a ride-along with Douglas County deputy named Ryan Gomez, who trains other deputies, and a lot of other deputies are having to really relearn how to treat cases involving drugs.
There's people that work here that were around when marijuana was still illegal, and if you smelled marijuana, get out of the car kind of a thing. So sure. We also have, just like other agencies everywhere, a lot of younger, newer deputies who have started after 110, so they've never experienced it any other way, which might be easier in an aspect because you're just learning what used to be non-criminal is now actually criminal. There's jail time that can be associated with it.
When Deputy Ryan Gomez arrests someone in Douglas County, they don't have the option of going into treatment right away. They have to go into the criminal justice system first.
We cite people, we arrest them, district attorney prosecutes them. Ultimately, it's the judge that judges them. A judge who sees something where this person is maybe a repeat offender, but this one time they wanted resources, they went through with trying to get help, there's no reason why a judge has to make a conviction of this crime. A lot of times they'll probably dismiss that because of the hard work and the determination. Most judges, it's a small area, they remember certain people. People stand out, and they might make a deal with them and say, hey, as long as you continue down this pathway, this is gone. But if you don't, and we keep running into each other, then things change, and next time it's not going to be as lenient. And I think that's kind of a good thought process.
And what is the thinking behind this approach as opposed to like what's going on in Lane and Multnomah counties?
So Douglas County Sheriff John Hanlon is a pretty interesting case because he not only sees this jail every day, he runs the jail, but he also has a very personal history with this jail. He was jailed as a teenager for a drunken hit and run, and he credits that for helping him realize a mistake that he made, and he wanted to get his life together. Became a deputy, became sheriff in 2008. And his 31-year-old son has also been in and out of that same jail for the past decade. And he says his son is addicted to drugs. All of that informs his approach to drug enforcement and his belief that jail is an important consequence for helping people realize the mistakes that they've made and the way that they need to get their life together, in his view.
But I can tell you, from my own experiences with my own son, if he got arrested and spent a day in jail and got out the next, that wasn't even long enough for him to realize that he'd done anything wrong. He was, getting out about the time he needed to go find another high. I'm not saying just because we feel like putting handcuffs on people and dragging them off to jail, and if they're charged with a serious crime is an absolute necessity. It's only a necessity if you want to wake them up and get them to think, you know what, this problem is getting out of hand. I've gone to jail 3 times in the last month. It's time I get my head screwed on straight, get into a program. And then they get into a program and they do well and they succeed, then go back and erase those charges. I'm not saying those criminal charges have to stay with them, for the rest of their life.
Okay, so it sounds like this is at least partially a philosophical difference between these counties, but I'm sure cost is also a big factor. How much money are counties getting from the state when they choose to set up a deflection program?
The state allocated $20 million to set up deflection programs, basically fund some administrative costs, initial costs, a coordinator position. Some counties are buying vehicles. Some are buying drug testing kits, that kind of thing. Larger counties like Multnomah got a few $1,000,000, but smaller counties got way less, way less, $150,000. And it's just not enough for them to really do anything with. Even some larger counties say it's far from enough money. Clackamas and Washington counties actually filed a lawsuit saying they need more money to make the full deflection program work. Other counties, like Douglas and Coos, actually left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table by not opting to do deflection.
That's right. And when I talked to Sheriff Hanlon about this, that's a lot of what he was saying was the amount of money that we would be getting isn't enough for us to be using and investing in, especially in his view, he wasn't necessarily sure if this experiment is going to continue on in the future. So I want to be clear, is really saying that he wants to take a wait and see approach and see how other counties are doing, see how the funding is going to shake out in the future before deciding whether to opt into deflection. But we also do know that from records we've received that, there is a philosophical difference occurring in Douglas County. The DA down there seems to be opposed to deflection. I mean, I received meeting minutes that says he is, quote, firmly opposed to deflection and, quote, people who do bad should be held accountable.
Most of these cases are going to all be cite and release cases, but the DA assures me that, by golly, he's going to prosecute them. And so it's kind of up to the court what happens to somebody from that point on. If they're prosecuted or if they decide to enter them into a diversion program, that'll be up to the court.
Douglas County does have a drug court. So how is that different from deflection?
I would say at the heart of drug court it's still intrinsically part of this system that we're talking about. The incentive is that you complete treatment before any of the charges or some of the charges that you may be facing can get dismissed.
It is worth pointing out, too, that yes, these new drug laws are absolutely bringing new cases into the court system that were not happening when drugs were decriminalized. But a much larger shift had already taken place in Oregon years before Measure 110 passed, and that's when lawmakers did away with a charge of felony drug possession, basically making them misdemeanors. And when that happened, it kind of pushed most drug courts in the state to focus on more serious cases where people were facing significant prison time and where the underlying acts for their criminal behavior were rooted in substance use disorders. In many cases, drug courts, have already shifted to a population that has a lot to lose by not engaging with drug treatment.
This is all very complicated, and it's only been about a month and a half since the law changed, so there's not much data available about how it's going so far. A lot of counties, including Lane County, don't have their programs up and running yet. Multnomah County recently reported that 70 people have been deflected there so far. And in Washington County, 17 people participated in the first month of deflection there. But it's really too early to say whether or not deflection will end up connecting more people with treatment. Oregon State Representative Jason Krupp is a Democrat from Bend, and he was one of the driving forces behind House Bill 4002. He talked about the philosophy behind deflection at a public meeting earlier this year.
We knew these programs would look different. And I think we actually encouraged that. We knew that programs in Clackamas County or Clatsop County or Columbia County would look different. We wanted people struggling with addiction to be able to make a quicker connection to those services and have the opportunity to avoid formal prosecution if they were caught in possession of drugs. We viewed this as a period of innovation and experimentation.
Obviously, we are going to continue to follow this ongoing experiment, which is kind of also a bunch of little different experiments. But Troy and Conrad, I'd love to hear from you both about what your biggest takeaways are from your most recent reporting on this.
I mean, I agree with exactly how you just described it. This is basically a group lab project. I mean, if it sounds confusing and messy, that's because it is. The state is letting counties throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, and over time, hopefully, we'll have better practices and standards across the state.
Well, and to add to that, in a lot of ways, this is another huge shift in Oregon's drug policy, and one that's similar to Measure 110. I mean, you have a law going into effect without everything in place to support it. Counties and law enforcement are both scrambling. They've been doing that for months now. And for me, I'm going to be watching to see whether recriminalizing drugs gets more people connected to treatment, and also what happens with overdoses. I will say one thing I've observed is how the debate has shifted towards one with a lot more common ground. I mean, we need more treatment, more support for people with substance use disorders. Tony Vazina is the executive director of the nonprofit 4D Recovery, and he kind of summed this up during an interview we had in September.
You have all these different individuals on the same page for what they want to happen. And what they want to happen and what they know can happen is that people with addiction can quit using, get into recovery, and become upstanding citizens. So that's not the debate anymore. The debate is, how do we get them in recovery? And what are the services that we need?
And, honestly, it feels so appropriate to end this conversation on another question. Conrad and Troy, thank you both so much for digging into this big, big topic with me today.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Conrad Wilson is OPB's Criminal Justice and Legal Affairs reporter, and Troy Brennelson is OPB's Public Safety reporter. You can read their ongoing coverage of drug recriminalization in Oregon at opb.org. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Check your podcast feed next week, the day before Election Day, for an episode all about how women won the right to vote in Oregon. It took 6 tries and more than 40 years, but women's suffrage passed here 8 years before it was a national law. Julie Sabatier produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. He also engineered the episode. The OPB podcast team also includes Mia Estrada and Sage Van Wing. Troy Brennelson and Conrad Wilson did the interviews you heard. The music in this episode is from Audio Network. If you have a question for us, please reach out. You can email us at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.